It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, on my ClearTouch Interactive board, I have Milton Bartley, the CEO of ImageQuest out of Nashville. I brought Milton on today because I want to talk about the SolarWinds incident. Cybersecurity is on everybody's minds, but I guess according to Milton, it's not on everybody's minds, and that might be the problem. Milton, how are you doing, man?
Doing great, Ray. Good morning, and I hope your knee is healing up and you're able to move around a little better.
Well, I'm doing much better. I probably won't dance on this video, but I'll try to keep enthusiastic. Milton, we've all heard about the SolarWinds incident. A lot of our friends in the imaging channel use SolarWinds as a product, and I know that you guys are knocking it out of the park with IT security. You take that extremely serious. You guys do a fantastic job there in Nashville with your clients, actually around the country. So I just wanted to get some insight from you on SolarWinds. So let's just start there. Give us the elevator speech about SolarWinds and where are we at? What's going on with that?
Gotcha. Yeah, so if you haven't been paying attention to the news, obviously last weekend, so 10 days ago, SolarWinds, which is a publicly traded $800 million IT security company, announced that they had been breached by a foreign government and that their tools, so the software that they provide for managed service providers like ImageQuest to deploy to manage our customers' environments, had been used to deliver a payload of malware that then enabled the bad actors, they're assuming the Russians, but I don't want to get into who it is because I don't think any of that's official, but the bad actors to then take control of those systems and or exfiltrate data from those systems. And it started back in the spring, and it really had been ongoing until it was discovered last week.
Wow. And this is mainly in the government space, is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's across the platform. So the government was badly affected. The Department of Homeland Security, National Institutes of Health, and the list goes on. I think there's 5 or 6 government agencies that have been publicly acknowledged so far to have used SolarWinds and been compromised. But I believe 400 of the Fortune 500 also are SolarWinds clients. In full disclosure, ImageQuest is a SolarWinds client. We did not and do not use that piece of software. It was compromised. But yeah, it's SolarWinds is almost ubiquitous in the IT world. You'd be hard pressed to find a major purveyor of IT hardware or software that doesn't use it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I remember when I spent my time with you, Milton, it was always about mitigation and how you prevent these things. It's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, excuse me. But what do you do with the vendors that support these organizations? I'm thinking about the government. There's a whole lot of organizations that support the government. Did they get hacked as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ray. And so I'll start off with this saying that, and this is my opinion, but it's shared with other security experts and investigators that are working on this SolarWinds incident. This will probably end up being the most egregious cybersecurity event in history to date.
Wow.
And we'll probably never know the full extent of this because it is so much involved inside the government, and a lot of that, for very good reasons, will never be probably publicly disclosed. But it's going to be crazy. But here's what we did. So we found out about this on late Sunday evening last week, so 10 days ago. And so on Monday morning, the first thing we did is we brought our incident response team together at ImageQuest, and we said, okay, well, first off, what do we use that's from SolarWinds? And we have 2 products. Neither product was on the affected list. We still took some precautions around those products and how we use them, and we did some things that we should have done, and we did. Second thing we did is said, okay, well, who are our critical vendors? So if you look at our SOC report and our vendor management platform, we have 17 vendors that we consider critical.
Okay.
And so we divvied those up amongst our security team, and we started reaching out to those 17 vendors and asking them a series of questions. Hey, did you use Orion? Do you use Orion? If so, had you updated to the patches that were delivering the payload? If so, what have you done to mitigate? What are you doing now? If so, are you at risk and are we at risk in your opinion? And do you have a formal statement you can share? And it's amazing, so many, these bigger companies already had formal statements prepared, a lot of them. And then also we would ask, hey, if you didn't use the Orion platform, did you use other SolarWinds products? And just to kind of get a baseline. We were really just gathering information. There's nothing for us to do with this, So I'll use ConnectWise as an example. I'm not picking on ConnectWise, and I'm not saying they did or didn't use SolarWinds. But let's say ConnectWise had come back and said, yeah, we use SolarWinds Orion, we do all this. Well, it's not like we're going to turn it off and not use it. I mean, our whole business runs on it. We would have been aware of the risk, and we would have made some strategic decisions around it, but it's not like I can shut it down. I mean, I can't stop servicing my clients, stop billing my clients, etc. So it's really just information gathering at that point, Ray, and finding that out from our third-party vendors.
Well, it's interesting. What about your customers? So do you have them do the same thing with their vendors when there's any kind of a breach like this?
Great question. And so this is a little bit of uncharted waters. So, our customers that we do manage security and manage compliance for have an incident response plan. So we encourage them to do what we did. Hey, we encourage them to pull their incident response team together, have a discussion. We could easily and quickly tell them, yeah, you don't use any SolarWinds products because we manage their environment, and none of our clients do use any of these SolarWinds products. But they need to ask those same questions of their third-party vendors, and if they're regulated, like a bank or a mortgage company, they also need to ask those questions about fourth-party vendors, right? So a fourth-party vendor is their third-party's vendor's critical vendor. So, we did encourage them. We built a little grid on an Excel template, just really simple. Just hear the questions in the columns and just put the answers in. And then now you've got a document that you can use as to talk about in your management meeting, or in reality, 6 months from now when this becomes important again because you find out that one of your vendors did use Orion and now they found out they were breached, but they didn't know in December of 2020, right? They find out in May of 2021. And now we need to go back and pull that list up again. And we can show our regulators, our auditors, our clients, hey, we did everything that we could do. We gathered the data. We took action where we could take action. But really today it's information gathering, right? There's nothing you can do about it other than just be aware.
It's just so crazy how deep these roots go. I mean, from vendor to vendor to support person. Ransomware is going to be $6 trillion in 2021, up from $3 trillion in 2015. What a fantastic business model they got going on there. But when I was doing some research, 91% of all ransomware, of all this threats, all this stuff's coming through email. 91% of it through phishing. And, we got Elon Musk sending people to space. We got electric cars all over the place. I'm talking to you on my ClearTouch interactive board in my den. Why the hell can't we just fix email? I mean, I'm just this is nuts to me.
Well, maybe you and I need to go do a little strategic planning session in Hawaii for a week and come up with a program. But if we could do that, we'd be billionaires, right?
There you go.
The way to fix email is to not use email, but that's not realistic. Okay. So the problem with this is it's humans, right? It's humans that are touching it. And I tell customers this all the time. Before you ever invest one more penny in the newest, latest, greatest firewall or WYSIWYG or widget for security or this new software or platform or whatever it is, and all those, many of those are good. We do sell those to our clients and use those. But before you do any of that, there's two things you have to do that cost you nothing, that will be far more effective than putting a new firewall in your data center or your closet. Number one is you got to train your employees. And you've got to come up with a training program or leverage a training program from a company like ImageQuest that is not just a one-time annual event to check the compliance box, but it really is an ongoing, engaging training platform to keep security top of mind and keep the humans in your organization top of mind, understanding that they are the human firewall for your company. And the second thing that's free is multi-factor authentication on your email. My gosh, if you're talking about 91% of this coming in through email, if you turned on two-factor authentication, you're going to block almost all of that. Now, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth. I know that the federal government, got breached through SolarWinds, and theoretically, these bad actors leverage two-factor authentication tools to overcome Microsoft's tools. I haven't read anything definitive on that yet. I've seen a lot of talk about it, and we'll wait to see what comes out of that. But the bottom line is, not having it turned on is still egregious. It's free. It's included in Microsoft. It's included in the Gmail platform. You just have to turn it on and use it every day. And when you do that, for most of us in the small business, if you're not the federal government or a major Fortune 100 company, that's going to be all you need to do to keep the bad guys from getting into your email. They're not going to take it to the next step. They come after you because you don't have that stuff turned on and you're low-hanging fruit to them.
Well, it seems to me that that's an easy thing to do, I know that you're from the print sector years ago. You got toner in your blood just like I do. And we're watching our friends get into IT service, and I think it's just hysterical. They'll plaster or wallpaper all these, awards they get. And so, Milton, I want to ask you a question. I've done some, satires on these crazy awards that people are giving each other and making each other feel good. For instance, an MSP that's in IT security for less than a year, and all of a sudden they're one of the best in the world, and all this crazy nonsense. But what can we do with our friends in the imaging channel to help them not chase awards, but rather chase certifications? So, I know your team is big on that stuff there in Nashville, and, this is just insane to me. What certifications do we need to be looking at?
Well, it's a great question, Ray, and so I have a mixed feeling on certification. So I mean, we've all known folks who go get every certification and they put them in frames and they hang them on the wall behind their desk, and they put if you in their signature block of their email they've got all these letters and initials after it, and I tend to make fun of that. It is what it is. But there are some that are critical, especially in this world. CISM, Certified Information Security Manager, is one that we look for. That tells me that you didn't just go out and study and take a test, but you've actually lived it. CISSP is the same way. That's one where you have to have 5 years of actually, they don't call it apprentice work, but you got to show 5 years of work in the field with a mentor that will sign off on that and certify it. So it's not, and that's in addition to passing the test, right? And it's like on our team, we've got, an offensive security certified professional. That means he is authorized to do penetration testing. So he can actually go out and test your environment and do those things. And then the certified ethical hacker, that's one we see a lot, CEH. That's an easier one to get. But again, I look at that and you gotta couple it, right? You gotta look at the certifications and then couple that with the individual and what have they actually done with it. Because if you just have a bunch of certifications but you've never practically applied that someplace in either mid-market or enterprise America, the certifications don't mean a lot to me. But if you've been applying that, like I look at our CISO, Myron, he's done it at Deloitte. He's done it at IBM in the government sector. He's done it in big healthcare. He's done it in the gaming sector, keeping the algorithms safe that change the payouts in slot machines in Vegas. So he's done some pretty cool stuff with this. So it's not just having those initials after his name, but it's also practically applying that in real world situations for big companies.
Well, I think it's something that all customers need to seek out when they're looking for MSPs. And let me ask you, would you ever do business with an MSP that didn't have two-factor authentication for their own business?
I would not, and I wouldn't do business with one that didn't force me to do it. So we actually force our clients to turn on two-factor, and if they don't want to, after listening to our talk track and us trying to scare the bejesus out of them, we have a document they sign that basically releases us from liability and our SLA and our master service agreement.
Well, Milton, I remember when I was with you, and you probably perfected this craft even better today, but you used to have a system where you could go in and kind of tell a customer what their risk was for ransom and actually what maybe even their payouts would be. Do you still do that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we use a tool. It's the company that owns it now is called Threat Connect, and the product is called Risk Quantifier. It's an enterprise-grade product, but they're coming down market to mid-market and then to the managed security service professionals like us, MSSPs. Basically what it does is you load all the information about the organization. Let's just use a bank. We load all the bank's information, their demographics, their size, number of employees, their asset value, their annual net profit, and then we load all their major applications, their core processing application, their mortgage processing application, their loan funding application, whatever those applications are. And then we answer the question, okay, how much revenue does that application generate in a year? It's pretty simple. I mean, these are discrete. We don't ask them to guess, we ask them to know, right?
Sure.
So like things you know the answer to. And then this risk quantifier uses some algorithms, and on the back end, it'll show you, hey, if you were to have a security event with ransomware, this is your exposure, $11.3 million, for example. And it's going to be this much in legal fees, this much in public relations fees, this much in paying the ransom, whatever. It breaks it down into all these categories. It's really, but it makes it very easy then to go back to the board of directors or the management team or whomever and easily justify expense or investment in cybersecurity tools and systems because they can see an ROI in lowering their threat profile in this particular category.
Well, it's the oldest forever new. That's a great Ben Franklin close.
Yes, it is.
I think of my times in the print sector, trying to get people, well, here's your lease payment, here's your service payment, we're going to do it for this for 0.008 cheaper. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's pretty interesting. So how is that going, getting these old folks like me to say, okay, I'm willing to do the two-factor authentication. I can make my life a little bit inconvenient for the sake of security. Are we still getting pushback from people?
We get pushback, yeah. So, and I'm not going to signal out any type of specific industry, law firms, kidding. But, we get a lot of pushback from customers, but only until you educate them. So once you educate them, typically they're embracing it. And then certainly an event like this SolarWinds event gives us a lot of credibility. And I tell people all the time, Ray, and you've heard me say this for years, a lot of times what we sell in the security space is an event-based decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I can sit down in front of the board or the CEO or the CFO or the management team, and I can explain, here are all the things we do from a compliance and cybersecurity standpoint. Here's what our engagement looks like. Here's what our subscription looks like, and it's X thousand per month. And they look at it and they're like, hey, this makes sense. We know we need this. HIPAA tells us we have to do that. I have to do these things. I don't have that. They don't have that urgency to spend that money, right? And they'll tell us that, hey, it's just not in the budget, or it's not top of mind. It's not where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 months later, Angie in the whatever department falls for a phishing campaign. Her email is compromised, and oh, by the way, she happens to be one of these people that deals with patient records, even though she shouldn't in email, she does. And now 200 patient records, or 200,000 or 2,000, some number of patient records are at risk. And all of a sudden, that CEO is calling us up saying, hey, remember that stuff you talked about 2 months ago? Can you turn all that on tomorrow? So it does become an event-based decision. So, but I'm kind of using that allegorically to tell a story, Ray. We are finding the world is far more receptive to this talk track now, just because they see what's going on all over.
Well, it's scary. I mean, like I said, you think about that Target breach, a few years ago, that started from a HVAC vendor to Target.
Yeah.
Some smaller company. I mean, it's just crazy. So it's a pretty big problem, and obviously $6 trillion in ransom is a huge ass number for the globe. So we got to fix it for sure. Well, Milton, I think it'll be interesting to see how this SolarWinds thing pans out. I want to have you on again. We'll talk about it as it progresses forward. But is there anything you want to share with the community? Just a little bit of words of wisdom here for the holiday. We're getting into 2021. We're about ready to open the door in that new year. What's the one thing they can do? And I know the two-factor authentication is obviously that's something they need to be doing. It's free. And but what do they need? What do they need to be putting maybe in a budget? And hopefully they've already done their budgets. But a lot of people wait till the last damn minute. But what should they really be putting in their budget for security for 2021?
Yeah, great question, Ray. And so I would tell you, there's a lot of things, and some of this is industry and company specific, but I'll be as general as I can. If you've read and are continuing to read about this incident with SolarWinds, what you're going to hear a lot is a new term. I call it's the phrase of the month of December. It's IOC, which are indicators of compromise. Okay. So essentially, the cybersecurity world has shifted from prevention to detection, understanding that, hey, we can't prevent all these things from happening. So as a security specialist, my job is to detect it as quickly as possible so that we can react accordingly, shut it down, stop it in its tracks. And so if I were going to be putting something in my budget for 2021, as a mid-sized company, as an enterprise company, I would be thinking about managed detection and response, NDR, or managed risk response, MRR. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. And that's how quickly can I identify something on my network that shouldn't be there, a process, a pattern going on behind the scenes, and stop it, shut it down, freeze it in its tracks so that my security team can take action.
Well, that's good to know. Let me ask you this question. I know you do the assessment on the risk, what that value of that risk is to the client and all that. How do you compensate ImageQuest or yourself, if you want to share that? How do you compensate yourself to do those types of research for your customers?
So you mean, I'm going to make sure I understand the question. How are we being compensated?
Yeah, how do you make money doing that? So a lot of
Yeah, so we sell it on a subscription. So we come into a company and we sell it just like you would sell any other type of managed service. So we sell a managed compliance subscription.
Okay.
And we figure out what is our level of effort and the hours we're going to put into this. What are the tools we're going to use to provide that service throughout a year. A lot of that work is done up front, but we divide it out over a 12-month plan, and we just charge you a 12-month monthly fee. As we call it, a subscription. And for that, you have unfettered access to our compliance team throughout that 12-month cycle.
Well, I'm sure that business part of your business is going to grow. I know last time we were talking, you were having some phenomenal growth before the SolarWinds incident. So, Milton, it's always great having you on. I appreciate what you do. I'm sure your customers do too. And I look forward to having you. And I know you got some new members of the team on, so we're going to get them on the end of the day with Ray again soon. I just want to say, hey, I appreciate your support as a reseller member of Tester of the Innovation Channel and all you do for IT services. Milton, we all know this, my friends. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo. We'll see y'all tomorrow.